Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 42nd episode of Stories of Service, ordinary people who do extraordinary work. And I am the host of Stories of Service, Teresa Carpenter. And today, as we always do, we have another awesome, amazing guest. She is in the leadership space. She is a mom. She is a Army spouse, and she serves in the Army. So, Sara Mae Chipchinsky, very nice to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you sharing your platform because everything that I've binged your stuff, obviously, and everything that you're sharing and all these stories are so important. So thank you for allowing me to share your space.
Well, awesome. It is an honor. And you found me through Instagram. And I always think that like Instagram's probably the least place that I'm as active, or my biggest following is, as most of you know, is on LinkedIn. And so it's always neat when I meet someone or I network with someone just through Instagram. So this is really amazing and great opportunity. So I'm going to read you guys a little bit about who she is, and then we're just going to get right into the questions. So Sara Mae is a multi-passionate toddler mama, Army wife, and entrepreneur who has more than a decade of leadership experience in everything from business to politics and nonprofit and the military. Now as a leadership coach and the host of the Beyond Leadership podcast, which you guys got to check out. I binged on it all the way up to this trip that I'm on. Really good. Her goal is to help you break through the BS expectations placed on you so that you can lead with authenticity and in alignment with who you are. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I really want to start off first with, I know that you serve in the Army, and I'd like to know a little bit about where you're from and why you decided to join the military.
Wow. So I was early in my high school career when 9/11 hit. And I always wanted to be a lawyer. But from that moment, I wanted to be a Navy lawyer, actually, because I wanted to deal with the Marines. Okay. Long story short, my parents told me I had to go to college first. And I tried to get into ROTC, and that didn't work out for me. And it wasn't until I was long out of college and in a different job, happy, didn't need it, that I found a recruiter who was willing to do the paperwork to get around the medical stuff to actually get me in. And I joined the Wisconsin Army National Guard when I was 25 almost.
Oh, wow.
In 2010. No, I was younger than that. 24, whatever it was. It was almost 12 years ago. But I joined the Wisconsin Army National Guard, and I have been in the Wisconsin Guard ever since, always in the 32nd Brigade as an intel officer. And now, just this fall, I got promoted to major, and I'm full-time in the Wisconsin Guard, and it has been an experience. It has been quite the experience.
I didn't realize you were full-time. So you're doing Beyond Leadership, the podcast, all this other stuff, raising children, and serving full-time.
Yes, and get this part. So my husband is also active duty military, and he PCS'd last year and doesn't actually live with us Monday through Friday. So I am, in addition to the business and the podcast and full-time military, essentially a Monday through Friday single mom to a 3-year-old.
Oh my God, Sara Mae. How the heck do you do all this? Like, what is it? What's your secret?
Don't sleep. I do sleep, but I think honestly the secret is just find what you love. And I love building leaders. And that's why I started the business, and that's why I've stuck around in the military. And that is my favorite thing about raising my son, because in my mind, I'm not just raising a little boy. I'm raising a future leader. I'm raising somebody's husband. I'm raising somebody's father. And that's kind of how I look at working with my soldiers too, and working with my clients. Like, I'm not teaching you and mentoring you where you are now. I'm teaching you and mentoring you so you can go and change the world later.
Wow. So do you feel that your background in the military, and how many years did you say you've been in?
I'll hit 12 this year.
Wow. Okay. So do you feel that gave you the foundation to branch out and to start this leadership coaching business? Like, do you believe that was that the stuff, the things that you learned in the military helped you transition to that next level?
1000% yes. If it weren't for my military career, I never would have started the podcast or had a business or probably taken this deep dive into leadership that I did. So when I
Hmm.
was uh, a junior captain, I was leaving one position, a battalion staff position, to go take on a company command. And
Hmm.
my mentor, like, I'm literally on my way out the door of this job, and my mentor's like, "Oh, come in. I want to talk to you before you go." And I'm expecting to walk into his office and get the atta girl conversation, like, "Go get him, killer. You're going to be great." But
Hmm.
instead, what he told me was, "I'm really worried about you as you take command because I don't think you know how to lead people,"
Wow.
which stunned me into silence. So I don't remember the rest of the conversation.
Oh, right. That's when you're just your flight or flight's up, and now you're just starting to break down. Yeah.
Like, I have no idea what else he said other than, "I'm worried because I don't think you know how to lead." And when he was done telling me whatever else he told me, I calmly walked out to my car, pulled my car to the back of the parking lot, and cried. Because I didn't believe him. I was in complete denial, but that spurred me to really take a look at, like, why would he say that? And as I looked into it, it was because I had done up until that point everything right. I had checked all the boxes, gotten all the right
Mhm.
positions, made friends with all the right people, knew all the right senior leaders in the organization, and I was miserable because I was just checking boxes. I wasn't being authentic. I wasn't in alignment. None of it felt good. So I kind of had to dismantle that and figure out from scratch, like, what are my priorities? What do I want to do with my life? How do I want to be known? What legacy do I want to leave? And from there, like, I created this process that I was like, wow, this really works. Like, if you know yourself, figure out what your vision is, and then really get to know your people, like, that makes
Mhm.
leading fun. That makes leading easy. And now that's what I walk my junior officers through. That's what I walk my clients through. That's, to some degree, what I walk my toddler through. Because to me, those are the important parts of figuring out how to lead. You got to start with, who are you? What are your priorities? Where do you want to go?
Right. And
And from
every
that, the business was born.
that's so I've never heard somebody's leadership journey like that. Most of the people I know that are leaders, they tell me, "Oh, I was leading in high school. I was the coach of this," or you know, they don't have like. And I've had a similar experience that I plan on writing about soon, and it really kicked me in the ass too when someone
Mhm.
gave me a bit of gentle criticism or however you want to put it, and um, you could have taken that so differently, Sarah Mae. You could have gotten defensive. You could have just got your
Oh, I did.
walls really just stayed up. Oh yeah, of course. But you also took it as an opportunity to fix yourself and say, okay.
Mhm.
And the problem with the military, and it's something that Stu Scheller talks about a lot, and he's spot on with this, is the fact that we are promoted based on how much our boss likes us, not necessarily by how much results we get. And so
Mhm.
that forces everybody to check boxes, to tick things off. And it's like this formula, but it doesn't sometimes mean that you're getting results. And so you're not being judged by the results that you're achieving. You're getting judged by how much someone likes you or how many boxes you've checked. And so sometimes to get that leadership experience, you have to go outside the
Mhm.
military and outside of your comfort zone like you did and say, okay, what else can I do to become a better leader? And that sounds like what
Mhm.
you did.
It is. I read every book and blog and listened to every podcast and, like, you name it, I have we have a literal wall of books in the basement, and they're like leadership books, all different leadership books. And, a lot of it just, there were bits and pieces that resonated, but there wasn't any one book that just felt right.
Mhm.
Because one of the other things I found was that much like the military, the leadership space is full of old white men.
Yeah.
And they don't lead the same way that I lead or that you lead. Like there's a lot of differences between a millennial mom and John Maxwell,
Mhm.
or a junior officer in the National Guard and some general. Like there's so many differences that I had to really just take the bits and pieces that felt right and figure out how to make that work for me.
Right. And you're absolutely right. Like the John Carnegie, I was hearing that in your show when I was listening earlier. Someone made that same comparison, one of your guests. It's really hard to go into some of those foundational leadership books and not see yourself, not see somebody who even in the podcast space. I have podcasts, what I call like the podcast mentors, and the ones who I love, and they're all men like Jacko or
Mhm.
Joe Rogan or Jordan Peterson. And sometimes I get a
Mhm.
little discouraged because I am heavy on accountability. And that's what I like about those men is that they're really heavy on accountability and being fair. And sometimes it's hard when you don't see a woman in a leadership role. And having gone through the ranks myself and been in 26 years, it's sometimes discouraging when I take a lot of deployed billets. I go away a lot. I do a lot of traveling, and a lot of times I am like one of the 10% in the room. I'm sure you're feeling that yourself now that you're a major.
It is. It's funny to walk into the room and to be one of maybe two or three
Hmm.
women in the room. And I have been lucky and very thankful to find women who I can identify with and who can help me out in my career, because we don't deal with the same issues that men do. Like, hear my kid crying in the background right now. You have a baby, and for men, they take their 7 days, now 21 days off. He's upset because his dad is making him take a nap right now. But they get their week or two off, and then they go back to work. They don't have to worry about, how am I going to pass a PT test? How am I going to go back to work and still nurse? How am I going to do this? Like, even just that one example, and that's a huge example, having a kid, but like being able to have leaders in your space who can walk you through, like, hey, you're pregnant. These are the things that are going to happen. Um,
Mm,
it's important.
it
And
really is. and
it's,
and honestly, like the intimate relationships that women form with other women are different, and they can be sometimes even a little more closer. Now I do believe that men should also mentor women, and there's
mhm,
David Smith, the Athena Rising gentlemen. There's two of them. I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but they're very big on that, and I think there needs to be a movement about that. But one of the things I really wanted to focus on this week and even some of next week is about women mentoring women and then men mentoring other men, because I do believe that we have a mental health crisis in our society right now, and I believe that we don't have enough community around some of the same sex mentorships. And I do believe that those mentorships are important because I believe that
mhm,
when you can identify with other women and talk about those shared experiences, it's really, really powerful. And I want to just bring in a Brent. He had a couple comments in here. He said, and this is about your criticism from your leader guy who told you weren't a good leader. He said, excellent, but the criticism was not gentle, perhaps true, one person's opinion, but brutal. We learn
mhm,
from that and do a strong bit of self-reflection and assessment. I agree. Sometimes even when someone's criticism is really brutal and even if it's sometimes not even coming from a good place, I sometimes can still get some value out of it if I can
mhm,
self-assess and look at it. And he's right. He said leadership is not a popularity contest. And
mhm.
it really isn't. And you're not going to always be everybody's friend when you are a leader. And so, what I want to get now from your journey, just kind of to switch gears a little bit after you absorb all these leadership books, and you said that you were told this around the time, I want to say, when you were a captain, right? Is that when?
Mhm.
Just
Yep.
okay.
I was getting ready to go take command, like literally on my way out the door. And when you're
And
going
when you're
from
going
leading a team
leading
of
a
like
team of
5 people to I'm going and taking this position that I have been gunning after for almost a decade, where I'm now going to be in charge of 119 people, and you get told you don't know how to lead. Like, that was earth-shattering. So, yeah, did all the personal development, did all the things that I needed to, and it's not like I did it and it's done. It's still a process. I'm still growing, still evolving. But, I took command, and we did our first climate survey. So, what's going on in the company? What's the temperature of the waters here right now? And the results from that survey were not what I expected them to be. This was June of 19, so pre-pandemic, and I discovered that I was walking into a disaster. The results of that survey were high rates of suicidal ideations, um, high propensity for sexual harassment and sexual assault in that company. There were just some really ugly things that came out of that kind of really pushed me into this. You need to know how to lead because these soldiers deserve better. And you, whether or not you know how to do it, you are their leader, and they are counting on you to get them through this and to get them out of this. And then the pandemic hit. So it was like double, triple whammy. But as I got to know them and as they got to know me, like, a lot of times we get these surveys and, we read it and go, oh, that's not good. Let's put it in the back of let's put it in a drawer and ignore it and just
forget about it.
drive on and pretend that everything's okay.
Yeah.
I think the pivotal moment in my command was that I did the exact opposite. I took those results and I do what all Army officers do. I put them in a PowerPoint presentation. And I sat in front of my company, literally sat in front of them on the table in front of everyone and clicked through and said, these are the results. And I got vulnerable and I let them see me vulnerable. I was like, this is not okay. We need to fix it. Not just me, not just you. I'm not going to put these results in the back of the drawer. We together as an Army family need to fix this because this is not acceptable. This is not what you deserve. This is not the Army that I want you to know, because this is not the Army that I joined. And this is not the Army that we should be forced to be in. And me sitting up there choking back tears, telling them that they deserved better, with my feet swinging off the table in front of the classroom. They still
Wow.
talk to me to this day and tell me like that moment was pivotal because that was the first time I felt like I had a leader who really cared about me, like a leader who actually gave a damn.
Yeah.
And even though, the pandemic hit a couple months later and we saw nationwide, not just in the military, but overall, suicide rates skyrocket and, incidents with drugs and alcohol went up because of the pandemic. None of that happened. Our climate survey, when I left command, everything actually went down and people were happier and they were healthier despite being in the middle of a pandemic because of the way, not entirely, I can't take full credit for it, but I think a lot of it started because of the way I decided to show up and the way I took ownership and the way I let myself be that people first leader that a lot of people will say that they want to be, but when it comes down to it, they still have to go check the box.
Yeah. And
My
that's what's
command team was not
important.
happy with me, but I did what I felt I needed to do.
Who was not happy with you?
My command team, they said, you need to be doing this. You need to be counseling people. You need to be doing more training. You need to, whatever it was that checked the box that said, yep, we're aware and we're fixing the issue. And that was not the direction I took. I was like, you can't train people to not have feelings. You can't train people to not feel the weight of the world. You can't sit them in a classroom and make them watch a PowerPoint and make them not harass one another.
Right.
So we took a different approach.
Yeah. What was the day-to-day things that you did differently after you had this meeting? What was like, did you set realistic expectations? Was that part of it? What were some of the things that you guys did as a team that you think made it so that people wanted to come in and work?
No, keep in mind, like, this is all National Guard too. So I only had these soldiers 1 week in a month.
Mm-hmm.
And this was what they were feeling when they were coming in 1 week in a month,
Yeah.
which, why would you want to leave your family on the weekend if this is what you're walking into?
This is what you're walking into, yeah.
Right. So I sat down with my leadership team and I said, okay, you guys, how do we as leaders, not just me as a leader, but like, how do you as leaders and me as a leader, how do we all get around this? And we came up with the simplest things, like, I'm going to check in with my soldiers between drills. Or like, I had an open door policy because it's right. The military mandates that you have an open door policy, but I actually was barely ever in my office because I was out talking to my soldiers. I went to the motor pool with them,
Mm-hmm.
which, who goes to the motor pool, right? In Wisconsin in December. But I went to the motor pool in Wisconsin in December. And I just found ways to have touch points to let them know, like, hey, if an issue arises, like, let's talk about it before the next survey. Let's address it now. Other things like, now, if you hear the off-color joke, a lot of leaders will just do this and look the other way because that's the Army and the Army will be the Army. But I would publicly say, nope, not again. We don't talk like that here.
Right.
And those just small changes change the entire culture.
It sounds to me like you created an inclusive environment where people felt like they were welcome, they would be heard. Their boss was approachable, was personable, and all of those things are what people need in order to feel valued. They need to feel like what they're doing matters and that the people that they're working with appreciate the fact that they're there. And there are so many times in a working environment when things get stressful and people just stop doing that. And that's when everything breaks down. And it's so important to take the time to care about people. So important. And if you don't care about people, you'll never accomplish the mission. And I think what you did just is outstanding. And I'm curious if that was sort of the launching point to say, okay, I've been able to do this in the military. Now, how do I take these lessons learned and what I'm doing in my professional life and say, okay, I'm going to try to help as a business? How did that come about?
So you're exactly right. I started making these changes in the military and implementing them in my personal life. And I would, sit there and talk on Instagram and be in Instagram stories and say, oh, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. And one day out of my mouth came, yeah, and I'm going to talk about this on the podcast when it launches next month. What podcast? So one of my friends calls me out. She goes, you're starting a podcast? I didn't know you were starting a podcast. I was like, I didn't know I was starting a podcast either. So I Googled how to start a podcast. And August of 2020, I started a podcast. And I talk about all things leadership, but not just like leadership in the traditional, like Jocko John Maxwell sense, which is why I called it beyond leadership. So we talk about, mindset and time management and how to run a business and how to lead in your home, all sorts of different topics. But yeah, the changes that I made because of my position in the military were really the launching point for the podcast. And then the podcast was kind of the launch for the business because I realized there's a huge need for leadership from a different perspective. And I have all of this experience and I want to share that. And I also know I'm not going to be in the military forever. So a business felt like a good place to start.
That's such an outstanding story. Wow. And I really encourage you guys to go to Sara Mae's website, her Instagram. Everything is so cohesive and on message. It's just such a beautiful piece of art. I mean, really, like your website, I was blown away. And then the way that your Instagram, you're very intentional with your colors and your messaging. And I want to know, how did you know how to do all that stuff? A lot of people just don't like. I how did you take a branding class? Like, how did you learn to be so
Yes.
Okay.
It was, you must not have scrolled back far enough, because if you go back far enough, it is ugly. I didn't know, because I went from this platform that I had been sharing pictures of my food in 2012
Right.
and what I had for lunch, and then it was my dog, and then it was my kid, and then I was like, okay, now how do I shift this to a business? And I invested significant amounts of money in the past couple of years, not just in branding, but in business coaching. Like, I've got business coaches of my own, emotional intelligence support. I realized that there are certain people who I work with, or have worked with in the past, or certain relationships that I have that cause me to, whatever it is about those relationships causes me to act in a way that I am not proud of. And I kind of wanted to figure out, like, okay, what is it about these relationships? Oh, well, now I know all of these things about myself. And because I know myself better, I can lead myself better, and I could lead myself even if I'm dealing with someone who I don't necessarily love working with.
Right.
So I invested significant amounts of money into myself and into building a business. And it's paying off.
It really is. I mean, you've done an amazing job with what you put together. Do you believe that when someone starts a business, how important is it for them to have this niche or this target customer? Because I struggle with that, because I really want to showcase people from all walks of life who show up in service to their respective communities. I don't want to be just a person who's only showing this kind of story or that. And how did you decide that when you went into your business about who you were going to serve?
It has been a work in progress. And what I have found is that if you figure out what your message is, and you talk consistently on the same topics, your people will find you. Because we get so focused on, like, narrowing down into what's my niche,
Who's
and
my
not
ideal
really,
customer? Yes.
like, who's my ideal customer, and they tell you to be super, super, super specific. And I'm like,
Yes, I do.
okay, well, my ideal client is moms between the age of 30 and 40 who have small children at home, who work online businesses in the network marketing space. And I'm like, okay, but those people don't know to look for me. But if I talk about the same things consistently, I talk about raising my son, I talk about being a leader in a business, I talk about branding and running a business, those people that are my ideal customer are going to naturally find me. They might not know that they're my niche, but if I'm talking about the same basic pillars consistently, and my messaging is consistent, and my branding is consistent, they're going to look at that and they're going to say, oh, there's a photo with a pink background and she's wearing a green shirt. That's Sara. she's going to be talking about leadership, and she's probably going to have her kid in the picture. There's my Instagram. That is my Instagram for you. And it's me showing up with my hair looking like a mess and talking about whatever leadership topic it is, relating it to the military or relating it to my kid. And my kid pops up and shows everybody his stuffy. He actually
Right.
took my phone the other day. It wasn't on Instagram, but started recording. He's like, "Hi, Instagram fam," because he watches what I do, and the people will find you. And I think that that's so cool. And especially given the past 2 years when we haven't been able to meet in person, we haven't been able to necessarily make new friends. And for a lot of MilSpouses and military personnel who move around and don't have their biological families nearby,
Right.
that can be difficult, but social media has really opened up this space for us to lead with intentionality and to find our people. And some of my best friends were born out of the pandemic, and I have never wrapped my arms around their neck to hug them yet.
We got a
Time is
couple.
coming, but not yet.
We have a couple people who are coming into the chat. Vicky was on last week, and she agrees. Everybody wants to be heard. It's so true. I mean, just being understood. When you feel like someone gets the real you, and you can just show up as yourself, and then someone gets that, it's the most beautiful thing. And I can tell
Yes.
you, you're so right, Sara Mae. Online communities have really opened that door for me too, because I feel like I can be completely myself online, and a lot of my real life friends become our people sometimes that I've never met in person,
Mhm.
but they've now become very, very close friends. So that has happened a lot. And one of my real life friends, of course, is Brian. That's Risen Ability, but his name is Brian. He's one of my husband's best friends, but he's also one of my biggest podcast supporters. He always joins in from YouTube
Mm.
there. So, I think that is the one good thing that we should all take away from this horrible pandemic, is the fact that we have now been able to really expand our communities. Like right
Mhm.
now, I'm sitting in a hotel Airbnb here in Garmisch, Germany. Never would think like I can still continue to do this show and podcast and do these things. And what I want to know from you now is, do you feel like um what have you learned from when you started your business to where you are today? Do you feel like the pandemic elevated what you were doing because now more people were engaging online and you were able to build more of your online uh, business that way, or your brand? Or do you think that there would have been a different way to have done it if the pandemic hadn't happened? I'm just curious how that played into it.
I That's such a good question, and I've never thought about that answer because, in my mind, we could spend all the time in the world thinking we wish the pandemic never happened, but at the end of the day, it did, and it is.
Still going.
Whatever still going on.
Mhm.
It did happen, it is happening, and if we spend all of our time wishing it away, it's fruitless. But I think that overall, the pandemic opened up a new world for a lot of people. Um, it opened their eyes to new possibilities. Maybe not right away, because right away you had like everybody was frustrated that they were at home with their kids and they were binging Tiger King and baking sourdough bread.
Yeah.
Um, I never had that experience. The pandemic actually made my life at work busier. I was one of the lead COVID analysts for the state of Wisconsin for almost 2 years now. Um, but a lot of people did have that experience where they were stuck at home. So, yeah, it was off to social media and watching a lot of Netflix. And that what really interests me is this global and societal change where now people don't necessarily want, now that people are going back to the office, they don't want to go back to the office.
No.
Where they realize that there's a better way, and they
Mm.
realize that they can make money working from their computer or from their phone. And for that reason, I don't think that the way I'm doing my business, at least right now, has to change, because I do work with these mompreneurs who have kids at home or kids in school and are working a lot of network marketing businesses or online businesses from their home, from their computer, from their phone. And I teach them how to, figure out their leadership style and use their leadership to grow their business.
Mhm.
And for that reason, like, my business is great right now because I have a whole slew of new entrepreneurs that were taught how to sell a product, sell a product, sell a product, and recruit the people. But now that they've got the team, they don't know what to do. So that's where I come in and I'm like, okay, well, now you have a team. Here's how you lead your team. Here's some good best practices. And I walk them through that process.
That's so cool.
I think online business is it's the now and it's the future.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that we've all got such good lessons from this pandemic, and Vicky is saying, it showed her that she's not necessarily the extrovert she thought she was. She now realizes that she may be
Yes.
happier on a deserted island with a friend named Wilson. It's true. I mean, I
I
think
agree,
that,
Vicky.
I always wonder too, like, I think someday we're going to rethink the whole introvert extrovert thing, because I don't think there is really one or the other. I think that, like, I can be an extrovert when I'm around people I'm comfortable with, and when I'm with my
Mhm,
tribe and my people, but I can be very
mhm,
introverted if I'm around people that I'm not comfortable with, or if I just don't feel like being there, whatever. I mean, I just don't think there's just this one type of person. And I think that the pandemic made it so that we had to learn ways to connect with people in unconventional ways, if we were all going
mhm,
to keep our mental health. And so I think
mhm,
from that perspective, I mean, this is, of course, aside from the people who got sick and the actual virus. I'm saying more the cultural effects of having to rethink the ways in which we work and in which ways that we live. And it's amazing to hear how you were able to sustain your business like that. So what are some of the challenges that some of the women who, or is it primarily women that you serve, or do you serve men? And then number two, what are some of the challenges that you see, like some of the biggest challenges that people come to you with?
So I do work primarily with women when in my business, and I found that it's a lot of women who have joined network marketing companies, because I think one of the other things that we don't really talk about is how women were disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. Um, when it came to losing their jobs and having to stay at home with the kids and losing that form of income, it disproportionately impacted women.
Mm.
And so now that kids are back at school, but maybe you had to quit a job or maybe you lost a job because you had to stay at home, women are more and more turning to network marketing, and they're doing really well in it. They're selling great products and they're growing huge teams. But now that the world is opening up, they're finding, it's hard to keep my team motivated, is one of the things that I hear so much. One of the most common frustrations is I can't motivate my team. I can't motivate my team. I can't motivate my team. And whether that's network marketing or uh, something in corporate or something in the military, yeah, it's difficult to motivate a team. And I would say it's not your job to motivate a team. So when you look at motivation, there's two different types of motivation. You can have external motivation, which is like, if you do this thing, I will give you this shiny toy here. So do the work, I give you the toy. And then when you want them to do the work again, they expect another toy. And then you want them to do the work again and they expect another toy. That's external motivation. Basically bribery that we use with our kids. The other form of motivation is internal motivation, where they actually want to do well because they want to be a part of the team, or they have that shared vision. They feel like they're part of something bigger. And as a leader, it's not your job to keep handing them shiny objects. It is your job to make them feel like they are a part of the team, so that they take ownership of whatever that vision, whatever that mission is, and they want to work on it. Because internal motivation is the only lasting motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you're going to break the bank trying to give them shiny things. So it's figuring out, one, who you are, and then creating that vision and getting buy-in on that vision is really what leadership is, so that you can all work together toward that common goal. And eventually you won't even have to talk about, how do I motivate my team? Because they are going to be so bought into the vision, and they're going to bring other people into that vision, and it's going to come to fruition.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is the magic in leadership.
It is. It really is. And when if you believe in your mission, if you believe in the impact that you're trying to have, I think that speaks for itself. Because what better thing out there is there than an organization or company that's trying to do good things in the world and is trying to push things to become better. I mean, that has been always my thing. Is you go into an organization and there's always things, small things that you can do to make the organization better. You're not going to maybe be able to fix everything, and maybe you only have this much of an impact, but this much of an impact is better than having this much of an impact. And so I always tried, when I was going into an organization, it was like, what little piece of the pie, what little part of this little box can I do to move the needle just a little bit down the road? And it really does start with just really small acts. It doesn't have to be anything grandiose. Mm-hmm. Have you found that as well?
I have. Sometimes it's the littlest things that make the biggest difference. And even so, I think back to a story, and I think it was NASA in the 60s, right? And when President Kennedy said, we're going to the moon, and then he said, we're putting a man on the moon by the end of this decade. And that became NASA's new mission, right? And all of a sudden, everyone at NASA, granted, money started flowing into, and money always helps, but everyone took whatever piece of their mission it was. And there's a story that there was some consultant or somebody who was touring NASA and said something to someone on the custodial staff, like, "Oh, what's it like to be able to sweep floors at NASA?" And this custodian said, I don't sweep floors at NASA. I'm helping to put a man on the moon. And that's what buy-in does. Everyone from the custodial staff to the chief engineer, physicist, whatever it takes to put a man on the moon, was all working toward the same mission. And they all had that one little thing, that one little piece that they bought into. That's how you change your culture.
No, I can relate. Where I'm at right now, I'm at United States European Command, and we are the ones who are helping provide the security assistance for the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Mm-hmm. And I had an opportunity 3 weeks ago to go back up to the media shop and get out of the Joint Operations Center, where I'm not as busy. But I knew there was an 04 major coming in who was going to get sent right to the jock. And I thought, no, I had my time up in media to go do those things, and she needs that experience. And today or yesterday, I just found out that she's going to be part of these defense consultative talks in Ramstein on Tuesday. And I'm just like, she gets to go and like be there. And I was so happy, like, for her. Like, so I gave her a call today and I was like, hey, if you need anything, I'm just going to be sitting around the jock at night. You just tell me what you need or what media prep I could do for you or whatever. And she's going to be prepping the same admiral that I got to prep for a practice session that he never ended up was never the spokesperson for, but I guess now they might have him as a spokesperson. And so it's just those little things like that, like I'm bought into the mission, and I'm not really like, I might be the one quote unquote sweeping floors sometimes, but I'm really bought into what my boss is about at this
Mhm.
organization. And I think they're really good people. It's a good team. It's a very, very functional, emotionally healthy team. And so I'm bought into it, right? And so if they tell me I got to go stand nights on the jock, I'm fine with doing that. And in some, it's not
Mhm.
exactly glamorous or anything, but it's helping the mission. And um, that is what leadership is all about. Is when you believe in the mission, and you think that you're there for the right reasons and you're doing the right thing. I mean, I truly wish we could do more, to be honest with you. But of course, there's the escalation piece, and those kinds
Right.
of things. But at least we're doing something, and it's an honor, to be able to, one of my things, I summarized the Kirby press conferences for DoD, and just to listen to him, he's just such an amazing communicator. And to be able to kind of have that front row seat to what's going on, is really impactful. And so I think when you're a part of organizations that do that, that's what it's about. It's about pushing that vision to the next level. And everybody can do that. I love that story about NASA. That's gonna stick with me. That's a
Yeah,
really good
and I was
story.
like, I'm helping to put a man on the moon. Yep, that is pure vision buy-in.
Yeah, it really is. And that's really what he or she is doing. I mean,
Mhm.
everybody plays a part. We talk about that all the time on the Navy ships, like the person that's down in the scullery to the person that's, had the
Mhm.
the people that have to clean the toilets, and things like that. I mean, everybody plays a part, and everybody's role is very important
Mhm.
to the mission. So going forward, are you looking to stay in the military and to continue to do military business, mom? I mean, what's sort of your like where you want to see yourself now?
My answer to that question has been the same since the day that I joined. And that is, I am going to stay in the military as long as it continues to be a mutually beneficial relationship.
Hmm.
Um, there are days when if you ask me, I'm getting out yesterday.
Yes,
Right? Because
yes, I have had those days too. Yes.
things get frustrating, and the nature of our work is high stress. But I think so long as I continue to have something to offer, I'm gonna stick around. And so long as there's still a benefit to me to stick around, so long as the organization still wants me, I will, at least in some capacity, continue to be around. And I feel that I have a lot more to give. There are there are people to mentor and climates to change and strategy to
Yeah,
implement, and I am here for all of it.
I love it. I love it. Is there anything that we haven't gone over or discussed that you would like to share? Any projects that you're working on, or any kind of advice that you have for people that want to up their leadership game, or they want to improve their leadership?
The number one piece of advice that I would give would be to get your hands on any and all information you can. And once you feel like you have a few golden nuggets, because you could read leadership books for literally the rest of your life and have that be your job and not make a single penny off of it. There's so many out there. Get a couple of nuggets and start implementing it. You don't have to completely change every single thing about the way that you act and lead and behave right away. But if you start to implement those small changes, if you start to take ownership right now, if you start to say, I'm putting a man on the moon,
Hmm.
then everything else will follow suit. And if it starts at home or if it starts at work, once you start making these changes and you start to lead in a way that is authentic to you and feels good and in alignment, literally your entire life is going to get easier.
Hmm.
Conversations with your spouse get easier. Difficult conversations at work get easier. Raising your babies gets easier. Knowing that you did a good job during the day makes it easier to lay your head down and actually get restful sleep at night. And it all starts with figuring out what you want and being authentic about it. And to heck with what anyone else says. If you want to sit in front of people and swing your feet off a table and that's your leadership style, then go for it.
I love it. I love it. It's interesting that you say that because I was just watching a video with The Rock, and it reminds me of what he said. He was, he started off wrestling in these like arenas with just 20, not arenas, parking lots at just a local gym. And there'd be like 20 people there, but he said he was always giving his best performance even for those 20 people. And then when he got to Hollywood, they wanted him to dumb down like his wrestling, and they wanted him not to play into some of those things that he did previously. And he said that the number one thing that he felt that made him the most successful was that he never compromised himself. Like he never stopped being who he was, and he brought that into his work. And I thought that's really the key to leadership as well, is embracing who you are and then bringing your whole self into the way that you lead, because people can tell when you're not in alignment, when you're sick, when what you say is different than what you do, or you're acting in a way that isn't who you are. And so I think that is exactly what you're trying to say, is that it is really about doing the work, being who you say you are, and embracing the person that you are and your unique skills and gifts, and bringing those to the table.
Absolutely. Once you, just like I said, once you figure it out, everything gets easier.
Right.
You have to do something with it. You can't just know, like, you can't take every single personality quiz and know, like, oh, I'm an Enneagram 6 wing 5 MBTI blah da 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 and rattle it all off. Like, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to use it? How are you going to implement it? How are you going to show up authentically now knowing that information?
Absolutely. And my friend Vicky says that you are very motivational, and I agree. Well, tell everybody who's listening. Of course, I've linked to it, and I'll link to it on the audio as well. But how can they find you?
I hang out on Instagram, which is where I found you. And I know you. I want to tell you, I found you on Instagram because I have a tendency to seek out other female military leaders on Instagram. And you were like, you popped up as like someone you might want to know on my Instagram. And I am now so glad that I do know you, because your story is powerful, and everything that you're doing here with the podcast is powerful as well.
Well, thank you. This is my labor of love. Obviously, I mean, I'm doing, like, this week I did 2 shows. So I usually don't do more than one, but occasionally I just love it. I love having guests on. I love hearing their stories, and just love listening to people's journeys. Everyone has such a unique journey on how they got to where they were and what they're doing. And it's so impactful when we share these journeys with one another and what people can learn from them. Even like today, I shared the Johnny Depp thing, and I know some people might think that's just tabloid. I don't. I watched that case, and what I saw was a man who was traumatized, and we don't see a lot of that as bare and as raw as that was. And to be able to see that, and for him to put a face and a voice to domestic violence when it's a man, and that's just something so rare. And and I think there's power in that. There's power in sharing those stories. So
absolutely.
Thank you so much, Sara Mae. You've really inspired me today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, just hang out for a second. I'll come talk to you backstage. But thank you guys, everyone, for watching. It's been an amazing episode. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your weekend and have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye now.